Hey guys, welcome back to another F1 2020 video. This time we're having our first ever laps around Vietnam. And the first thing I'm going to say is this track has like some of the longest straights I've ever seen. Even though they're not exactly straight, I mean, the amount of time you spend flat out through some parts of this circuit is absolutely crazy. It also has this S section, pretty difficult to get correctly, especially when you're first learning this track. This track doesn't have as many landmarks and a lot of blind corners like this one where you can't see the exit entirely. I can tell you now that that first corner or last corner going onto the pit straight, a lot of people are going to bid it into that wall, probably more than the Wall of Champions, because for starters it's a blind corner, and second of all you got no runoff, and it's pretty tricky to judge correctly as well. So that's going to be another tricky corner, I'm going to guess already. Anyway, going to move on to some of the quicker laps that I managed to actually put together. So this is, yeah, one of the quicker ones that I actually managed to complete without invalidating. This track, it's hard to get together completely because one, it's a fairly, lengthy track. It's not short like Zandvoort. Zandvoort, it's like a 1:11 or something, I think. Or something to that effect, whereas this track has got a fair bit of length to it. It's a 1:34 at the moment for me, which I'm sure people are going to knock down once the game comes out. People will absolutely thrash that lap time because everyone doesn't really know what the setups, the best setup is for this track at the moment, at this point in time. But I'm going to do my best to try and at least, let's see, beat Tim McMurdoch here, fellow YouTuber. So we'll see how we've got our setup on for this one too. So we're actually running a setup. This one was with had more error on it. So this time we're gonna be slower down the straights, but we should be able to make up that ground through the corners, especially through this final sector, through the S section. This is probably the hardest part of the entire track to get right. That in the first couple of corners. So this part is very much like the USA S's or Maggots and Beckett's kind of. It's pretty much tried to clone that to that sort of effect. This corner is quite satisfying when you get it correctly, and if you nail this blind corner, even though it's super difficult, it's quite enjoyable to get right, even though I slammed into the wall that time. I don't know how I improved. Anyway, gonna give you my analysis of the track this time. Braking as late as possible going into turn 1. Make sure you're patient before getting onto the throttle for this long sweeping right-hander where you can't see the apex, kind of easing off somewhere past that line. Make sure you get the slingshot correctly going onto this long straight, because you want to absolutely maximize the drive coming out of that corner. So that's the most important part to get right. Braking late, and you want to try and cut this corner as much as you can while getting away with it. Avoided the second curb, ran a little bit too deep there, touched the wall. It's going to cost a little bit of time, but we did get the nice slingshot, nice deep line through there. I think Tim McMurdoch took too shallow of a line going through that corner, and that does affect your run all the way down into this hairpin, which is a really tight left-hander. Tim McMurdoch will eventually cross past this again though, because he's got less downforce, less drag. Braking as late as you can. Be very patient. Wait until the car's fully rotated before you get on the power again. Try to avoid that curbing on the outside, as if you straddle that, you'll lose a whole bunch of time. Braking as soon as you reach the curbs on the left-hand side there. Hit the apex nicely. One of these S's you actually straight line. It's this one. And then you hug the inside of every other S from that point on. Very much like USA or Maggots and Beckett, so try your best to maximize the momentum going through each corner. Braking before you reach that black box, trying to get a good exit for this corner, and then you want to have a nice and tight line through that final bend, avoiding that final wall on the outside. That's going to be more common to be hit than the Wall of Champions, and we are currently top of the leaderboard. And that is somewhat of a clean lap, apart from touching that wall through the long winding left-hander that we did on that lap. So there's plenty of time to be gained. Obviously not a perfect lap, not a perfect setup, heaps of potential there to be found. I'm not sure what people are going to do with the setup exactly, whether they're going to run lower downforce for the super long straights, or if they're going to run higher downforce like I did for the S section, to make sure that you absolutely nail that. Keep in mind, I did do this lap on the controller instead of the wheel this time. I don't know if there's much of a advantage or not through a lot of these corners, because a lot of the corners that go into the straights are involving like a slingshot kind of corner, which involves a lot of picking the right line to time it correctly coming straight out of the corner, where it's sort of a little chicane before you enter onto a massive straight, and that happens a fair bit in this actual lap itself. So like most tracks, it's probably going to be more suited to the wheel, especially through the long winding corners and the S section, that's for sure. So yeah, overall it's an alright lap. It gives me a lot of Azerbaijan, Valencia and Russia vibes, the way I kind of read the track. It's super flat. The only elevation really is the curbing if you take the curbs. The curbing is very much like Azerbaijan curbs on the 2019 game. However, the overall curbing on the game is a lot less savage than it was on the 2019 game. So even though it's similar, it's still a lot easier to take curbs in this game than it is in 2019, that's for sure. In terms of how much I'm going to enjoy this track, I think in comparison to Zandvoort, being the two new tracks to the calendar, I enjoy Zandvoort a lot because of the bank corners and the flow that it has. This is very much like a Azerbaijan kind of street circuit feel to it. It has, you know, that S section that's also similar to the third sector in Azerbaijan as well, which leads onto the big straight in Azerbaijan. But yeah, there's definitely, like, if you nail the lap around here, it can feel really satisfying, especially the final corner. But it's a very high risk, high reward kind of circuit, and it rewards a lot of patience, especially going through the long winding corners. So it's difficult to get them correct because they're so, like, you only get to see the apex when you're basically coming towards the end of the corner, which is really difficult to try and judge where your racing line's meant to be. So for learning, it's a lot more difficult to learn this track than Zandvoort and a lot of other tracks, just because of the nature of the cornering and the walls that stop you from seeing where the apex is, especially through, I think it's like turn 2. That corner is probably one of the most difficult ones to get correctly on this track. That being said, it has a lot of unique kind of corners to it, like this corner that we're going through right now. I don't really know too many tracks on the calendar that have something similar to it. It's a very odd shaped circuit too, if you look at it from the track map and above view. So yeah, this straight, if you can't overtake on this straight, then I don't think you're going to be able to overtake anywhere. It's a heavy braking zone. It's like, I'm not sure how long it is compared to the longest straight in F1. It might be close to the longest straight, or maybe even the longest on throttle piece of track that we have. But it's, if you can't overtake there, then I don't know where you're going to overtake, guys, because you should be able to make a move if you're close enough going through that portion of the track, because you just have that much opportunity to get into the slipstream of the car in front. And then you got that heavy braking zone. Even if you don't manage to get completely alongside, you can make a dive bomb going into that left-hander hairpin. So yeah, this might be one of the more difficult tracks to learn, like on the entire calendar if you're new to F1. This might be, as a beginner, one of the more challenging circuits to learn, especially this corner that we're going through right now. You can kind of just hold it as wide as you can before knowing where that final apex is, because you can't see it because of the wall. And that's just what adds the level of difficulty to it, because if you could see that apex from a while away, you'd know exactly where to put the car on the way to the apex, but you can't know it, so you go completely off memory. And same with this corner, try to take a nice wide line. It's similar to like France in a way as well, I guess, because you got a whole bunch of winding corners and late apexes in France, where you try to put the car in the best position to come out of the corner rather than going into it. So yeah, there's a whole, it's like a real mixed bag of different sort of corners. And obviously you got the super long straights. So it'll be really interesting in the league racing scene. You add the overtake button on top of all this, and it should be really interesting to see what happens in league racing. I think there's going to be a fair few DNFs here because, one, the walls are so close if you make a mistake, and overall it's a very high speed circuit. So if you come unstuck around this track, it's most likely going to be in a wall and at a high speed. So I predict that there's going to be a lot of DNFs, especially through this corner. I smacked the wall just to show you for that. But yeah, that's my overall opinion of the track so far. Going to be tricky to learn, satisfying to get right once you do learn it. Not as satisfying as I'd say as Zandvoort, those sort of tracks. I love Germany, those sort of flowing tracks that have banked corners. I think everyone loves banked corners, might be a fan favorite there. But yeah, that's going to wrap up this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it provided a useful insight as to what this track looks and feels like. I can't wait for everyone else to get the game eventually in July. So until then, I look forward to seeing you all very soon and racing against you on the game. Hey guys, thanks for watching and subscribing. I'll see you all in a brand new one.